Well, the Star Wars Outlaws previews are in, and they are a bit mixed. Some saying it's a fun time. Some saying it's very much a Star Wars game, while others are saying graphics and the game itself feel a bit dated, and everything is sort of basic, lacking a bit of depth. Maybe they spread out the game a little bit too thin, sort of trying to be a jack of all trades and therefore a master of none. Now, if you like this type of content, be sure to hit subscribe and the bell button. I do a daily upload and live stream right here on the channel every day, and you can come in, watch those uploads, and then come discuss them with me. Now, this is just purely live, so you might be watching this later, but I'm going to look at a bunch of the previews and sort of tell you what people are saying, but I'm going to open and just give you a brief sort of summary of everything that I heard from sort of SkillUp, ACG, as well as what I was reading on Twitter. So let's just sort of start with sort of how SkillUp couched this. It was very much, he was saying, listen, it feels like Star Wars. I like being in the world. He said, however, it is very basic. And I mean, this is a common theme and a common thing I am hearing from virtually everyone that I read, every preview that I look at, every Twitter reaction, is that it's very basic. And I remember when I reacted to this video in particular, when I thought, man, this game has been downgraded. And I remember telling people I was worried about this combat sequence because it seemed like they were trying to sell me something. It seemed like they were trying to convince me, oh, the combat's very great and very deep and very vast, and there's all these different things you can do. And according to the people that have played it, and this is SkillUp's video, by the way, he compares a little bit to Jedi Fallen Order and Survivor. That's why he's showing this here. And what I said was, I'm concerned that they're doing that because they want me to think the combat's better than it is. And virtually everybody that I've read or listened to says the combat is extremely basic. ACG said it kind of reminded him of Uncharted, so don't expect a sort of deep or vast shooting or combat system in this. Now, the other thing that was showcased, I think, rather well in SkillUp's video was the speeder. The speeder just sort of doesn't do much. It's very much just a way to get from point A to point B. Its movement wasn't all that great, and the speeder combat was arguably even worse. It was very clunky, it was very awkward, and it just didn't seem to be as awesome as when they first showed it. It just has a lot of jank to it. And space combat, similarly described as other parts of the game, the space combat is just nothing. It's very basic. It sort of feels like a mini game. This is a concern that I echoed a while ago. It seemed like a game that was going to include open world traversal, combat, melee, RPG elements, quests, side quests, open world exploration, as well as space combat. I was worried that when you do that, you typically get something that is a bit diluted, and the space combat's being described as not really a major part of the game. And also just not something with a lot of depth in it. Now, I am seeing people say in my live stream that, like, hey, Uncharted combat's pretty good. Yes, you just need to know what you're signing up for. Like, if you thought this was going to be sort of an open world action adventure shooter, the shooting is very much it feels more like a set piece than a general focus. This isn't going to feel like, for example, Jedi Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor. The melee-based combat is an enormous focus of the game. It's like the central piece to what you're doing. It almost feels like a Souls-inspired action game. And this game's combat very much is not like that. It's going to be closer to an Uncharted in that realm. Now, in this section, SkillUp did talk about how there's really cool open world discoveries you can make. He read that the race was fixed and the heaviest, animal is going to win. So he went and placed a bet and he won some money. We have been hearing too that Nyx is sort of the star of the show, your little companion that sort of goes around and does things for you. And that is a focal point of the stealth combat that people seemed to universally enjoy. Both SkillUp, ACG, and some of the other previews that I read on Twitter and articles seem to say that the stealth and the movement and using Nyx was rather enjoyable. Now, in the realm of graphics, we did do a video where I said, listen, there was a very clear Star Wars Outlaws downgrade. Undeniable that has happened from that very first trailer that they showed us, and this is something that SkillUp focused on. This is something that I have been focusing on. I am not giving in to the, I believe, false narrative that they have tried to make K-Vess look ugly. I think faces in general in this game and engine don't look that great. They look like puppets. They look sort of waxy and mannequin-esque. If you look at all the promotional materials and you look at the early footage, I think they did want her to look like the actress to a certain degree. I also have a tweet that I sent out, and I took various screenshots from all the different trailers. She has never looked like the same person or even like the actress consistently. Sometimes she looks like her hair is different and flat. Sometimes she looks like her skin is very pale. Other times it looks like her skin is darker. We're not really sure what the reason for that is. Has the artistic vision of the game gone through some sort of change, or are we just seeing the difference between rendered scenes, cinematic scenes, key art? Key art always looks great, right? Because an artist got to paint it, draw it, whatever. And then when you're in engine, it's going to look very, very different. You can even kind of see here the non-human faces all look pretty good, and then here he points to other Ubisoft games that have struggled with faces. I think Skill Up is good to point that out, that this could be an engine level thing, a dev level thing that they have just continued to struggle with. Overall, people are coming away with a general sort of positive feel. Now, some of that could be because we're dealing with previews. ACG was very hesitant to draw sharp conclusions, which I think is totally fair. You only play 3 to 5 hours in a game. You don't want to act like you've played the entire game or you understand the scope of it. But Skill Up even was willing to say, hey, I really liked being in the game as a Star Wars fan. It feels like Star Wars. This is something that I have said very many times. They've nailed the vibe and the feel of Star Wars. But he did say that it is going to feel very much like a sort of, maybe, I don't know if he used this phrase, but based on what he said in the other previews that I'm seeing, very much a more dated feeling game. Gonna have some of that Ubisoft jank, gonna have some of that Ubisoft open world. I thought an analogy that Skill Up made would be very helpful to echo here. He drew a comparison to Avatar. He said, if you were a big fan of Avatar and you just want to be in the world of Avatar, Avatar Frontiers of Pandora did an amazing job capturing that. But it was a sort of basic, bland, non-deep game. And he says that Star Wars Outlaws is falling into sort of a similar category of, if you're a huge fan of Star Wars, you just want to be in the Star Wars universe, you will probably enjoy this game. If you're looking for a game with a deep combat system or good space combat or all sorts of depth, you are likely not going to enjoy your time. So that's just a very, very quick show open flyover. And now we're going to sort of get into the meat of the show where I talk to the live audience, and I'm going to look at a bunch of the different previews that are out there. I've got VGC, I've got IGN, I've got Engadget, I've got GamesRadar, The Gamer, Game Informer, and PC Gamer. If there's one that you would like me to check out, say something in chat. We will definitely make sure and check those out. I'm trying to find a spectrum here of positive and negative. I did feel like ACG was a little bit more positive than Skill Up. ACG also took the time to go into the details about how the factions work, and it actually looked kind of cool. It was a little bit more informational. I didn't quite get a vibe of whether or not he thought it was excellent or not, and I think that was largely because, as he said near the end of his video, he's like, until the whole game's out, it's hard to know how some of these things are going to be experienced. I do think some people are worried that like the gunplay and the speeder and the combat is going to get really old really quick because there just doesn't seem to be a lot of depth to it. So curious what you guys think. Take a quick second and go through your morning ritual, man. Smash that like button. Let's set our sights on 200 likes. And the goal for the week is 500 members. You guys are well on your way, already 105. Big day yesterday to put us a little bit closer to that goal. And I still gift 5 every 25. And the good news is, with the new way of keeping this goal here all week, is you're already 5 up on the day. You're already 5 towards me having to gift 5 back. Force Gaming actually liked the space combat and the faction system. I wish I would have watched Force Gaming's video. I like his content. I generally like his takes on things. I think he's usually very fair. So if he liked the space combat and the faction system, that's encouraging, because it did seem like ACG thought the faction system was good. But again, it's hard to know when the game is not completely out. Yo, what's good, feed? I see you in the chat. And Spirits is going to start the day with a VIP renewal. Han shot first, and so did you. Thank you so much, putting us at 106 on the week. Those VIP and Member Plus renewals count, so thank you to everybody who has been doing that. Maddie had some interesting things to say, but that's obviously a vid and not an article. Still looking forward to trying Outlaws. I've heard stealth is good, and that appeals to me. Well, VGC says the following: final hands-on, Star Wars Outlaws doesn't feel like a Ubisoft open world at all. Now, I have heard people stress this here, that it doesn't have a lot of those tropes, those open world tropes, and that is largely being celebrated. I think people didn't want to have a lot of those, things repeated, and they right here say it's a lot like Force Awakens. It looks like Star Wars, it sounds like Star Wars, and if you're even a moderate fan of the franchise, you're likely to have a good time on the journey. But the other side of that coin is that nothing we've played so far feels like it's pushing in a bold new direction, and that echoes a lot of what I have heard. Yo, Camille renews their Member Plus. Thank you so much for jumping back in. That takes us to 107. Anytime you guys gift members or choose Member Plus and above, you're supporting me and the channel directly. Thank you for doing that. So, a lot of people have said this, man. It looks like Star Wars, feels like Star Wars. That's almost identical to what Skill Up said. Like, if you're a fan of Star Wars, you're just going to like being in this world. It may be possible that it's a great AA Star Wars game, just not a AAA like everybody is expecting. It feels like it's going to be a little bit too big and vast of a game to call it AA, though. I understand what you're saying. But I don't think you would call this, based on the experience people had in 4 or 5 hours, this is going to be a game that you'll easily sink over 20 hours into. I don't think that would be fair to call it a AA game. Now, even if it feels a little bit dated, or, it feels like they didn't really innovate enough, that certainly is cause to be critical, but I don't know. I'll be interested to see what VGC says as we continue to read their preview here. Let's take a look. Let's see if I can't find... they're sort of summarizing their gameplay. Let's see. Soon Kay's attempting to integrate herself. The game's reputation system is both... Here we go. This is good. I want to know about this. The game's reputation system is both one of its most interesting features and something we worry could turn out to be somewhat underbaked. Essentially, missions take you on in the world, and they will result in you gaining or losing reputation with the game's factions. These are the likes of the Hutt Cartel, the Ashiga Clan, and the Crimson Dawn. Yeah, ACG said it seemed like it was a little fragile, like you could upset people or have ramifications for your actions that could happen kind of quickly. Your status with these factions will influence things like what items are available at certain merchants, discounts at those merchants, and access to areas of the world. Occasionally, you'll come across a fortified building or outpost, which, depending on your status with the group controlling it, it can either be a stroll in, or it's time to start blasting. During one mission in our preview session, we were tasked with sneaking through the back of a restaurant in order to be part of the map with some hidden documents. In order to get part of the map. Because of our status with the clan that owned it, we skipped half of the task, basically walking right through. So I kind of like that, though. I mean, I like the idea that if you take the time to improve your standing with a faction, it's going to have a direct gameplay result where you can now have a mission play very differently, right? Any new post seems to be universally praised. I'm not sure what you're saying, D-Tom. This is a very obvious cause and effect of getting in with the gangs. However, due to the fact that the game has to account for you being on good and bad terms with everyone and not locking you out of content, it can sometimes feel hollow. Sure, if we didn't have the right reputation with that group, we couldn't have brazenly walked through the door, but just 10 feet away, there was an absolutely massive K-vest-shaped vent staring us in the face that would have led us to the same area. Right, but I mean, that's, I think, a good way of kind of crafting a narrative where, depending on how you play, the outcome of quests and missions and things are going to play very differently, right? I think that's probably good. Similarly, during a mission, we double-crossed our mission giver and lied to them about a score. Instead of freaking out and vowing to never work with us again, the mission giver simply said that they thought we were lying and only did half the job, so we would only get half the pay. Not very criminal, in our opinion. I think this is a hard line. This is a hard line to dance on, right? Because what you've got to do is you've got to establish that the player can make decisions and do things that are going to impact what happens. However, if you start making it to where content gets locked out or results are too painful, what you'll end up doing is you'll work against your very aims. I think you'll frustrate the player and you'll dissuade them from continuing. And I think that can be a problem from a gameplay perspective. We asked the team considered a more drastic reputation or morality system, especially when, despite Kay's plucky, friendly character, the player themselves can get up to some pretty shady dealings in the game. They said here, being nice to every crime syndicate probably wouldn't make any sense in this universe, laughs associate game director. The fantasy is better nailed with the reputation system we have in Outlaws. Right, like, I don't think you'd want to have a fantasy where everything's going, peachy keen or, terrible. You got to kind of land somewhere in between. The example we can't stop thinking about is during one mission, we entered a random room and started searching for information. One of the data pads we came across told us that the next Father Star Wars horse race was fixed in order for the largest one to win. There are places around the world to bet on these races. With this information, we can then put all of our credits on the fixed race guarantee and profit. While this is a cool way to use information around the world in order to benefit Kay, it didn't really seem like something the character that we'd come to know would do. An option to shape our Kay into a more street tough, no-nonsense scoundrel or someone with stricter moral code may have been more interesting. Well, but you could literally not do that, and then the consequence is you don't get the money. Like, that's your choice as a character. I mean, obviously, I think maybe what they mean is, would there be, a moral outcome from not doing it other than just not getting the money? Would it move a moral needle in the game to therefore make that choice more meaningful instead of like, oh, I just missed out on free money, right? Kay herself is an incredibly charming on-screen presence played by Humberly Gonzalez, who's previously appeared in several Ubisoft projects. Kay is a character we're happy to spend 40 hours with. She's funny and witty without quipping your ear off. Let's see if we can get some more commentary on... Yeah, Nyx again seems to be... People seem to really like Nyx as your sort of version of BD1. So yeah, and this was something that I found interesting. I found it interesting that a lot of people are like, it doesn't seem like that open world. Like, Skill Up did not seem to think that it was much bigger than like a Jedi Survivor. So... Anyway, when it was announced that Ubisoft was doing an open-world Star Wars game, the jokes about towers pretty much wrote themselves, but in truth, Star Wars Outlaws doesn't really feel like a Ubisoft open world at all. When exploring Tasharna, we were struck by how little the game actually led us to interesting locations, instead relying on us to use our eyes to decide what we wanted to explore. As we were speeder biking through a field, we heard on the radio that there was some Imperial activity nearby. This didn't pop a massive exclamation mark up on our screen, and the game did not wait for us to be perfectly in range for the events to occur. Instead, we saw the ship in the distance, chased it down, and watched as the stormtroopers attacked a local group of pirates. Instead of helping them, we waited for the stormtroopers to be finished, stole all of the lot, and ran off. I think they meant to say stole all the loot. We hope the game is full of moments like that. This is something that I like. Like, this feels more dynamic and emergent instead of like, there's something happening nearby and like there's an exclamation point that pops up and you ride over and you do the thing, right? Or you're constantly climbing towers and, scanning the area so that you can, find more stuff in the area. So to me, yeah. Transparent Tech is making a major comeback. We're introducing an exciting brand new controller with the Xbox lineup. The Xbox line. So what kind of a controller is this? Is it see-through? Let's see here. Apparently, people are saying that you can't even click on the page yet. Anyways. The cities are full of them too. In a random outpost, we walked past a malfunctioning droid, only to be told that this motivation function was broken and thus too depressed to continue its work as an R5 droid. Okay, so there's other random events that can come up, so that's kind of cool. We assume that due to spaceflight being a key element of the Scoundrel experience, the team felt it was essential to include, but if the game dropped it completely in favor of the game ship being more of a fast travel function like in Star Wars Jedi games, we don't currently feel like a lot would be missed. So this is going to get on to, do they say much other than that? While we do concede it's a far larger focus of those games, Star Wars fans who've likely played all the recent Star Wars console titles will notice the disparity. Oh, so they don't think the flying is that great. While it's novel to be able to fly from planet to planet, and there are some incredibly beautiful sights to see in space, the combat and the flying didn't feel great. This is pretty consistent from the previews that I've read and watched. They're all kind of saying that. By the end of our time with Star Wars Outlaws, we knew exactly what the next 40 hours of our time with the game looked like, but that doesn't mean that we didn't want to play it. It's fairly formulaic, but it's nailing the formula that it's following. There's been plenty of room for a third-person Uncharted-ish Star Wars game in the market, and Outlaws is a great attempt. So that was VGC, mostly a positive one. I want to go to Engadget now, and I want to read theirs. Theirs, I believe, is a little bit more negative because it's titled Engadget. I really want to like Star Wars Outlaws. So, guys, take a quick second. We're only about 20 minutes into the stream. Smash that like button. Let's get to 200 likes. And we are putting the entire weekly member goal up here. So this is not what you guys have done today. This is what you've done so far in the week. So if you gift a member, Member Plus and VIP renewals count as well. So double check that $ at the bottom of the chat. See if you've got a renewal to celebrate. We want to thank you for that. And you can always gift members in single or the bigger bombs like some of the guys here drop. 2 previews on and 1 deep dive later. I'm not convinced I will. So Jessica here saying she wants to like it and just isn't sure that that's going to happen. So let's try to go down here and see what we can get. I would describe the overall theme as confusing. I encountered a head-scratching moment in the first minutes of my initial preview at Summer Games Fest. In June, I crawled through a busted rocky base and found myself at the mouth of a cliffside cave. The mountain 2 was too steep to climb down and the ground too far away for the leap of faith. I stood there and searched for an indication of where to go next, scanning the scenery from side to side and top to bottom, but nothing jumped out, so I jumped. This was the incorrect move. I died and reset. After searching the edge of the cave for a few more minutes and second-guessing whether I was in a proper location, a Ubisoft spokesperson pointed out a strip of coil metal high above my head, literally as far as Kay's field of view could go beyond, and it blended in with the foliage. An inconspicuous white label identified it as an interactable object, but the entire thing was incredibly easy to miss. I pushed R3 on the controller and hooked onto it with my grappling gun, feeling incredibly dumb. Unfortunately, this was a repeated experience and feeling throughout the preview levels. Thank you so much, Joker Quinn, for gifting a member and taking us to 108 on the day. Appreciate you, Joker Quinn, one of the single gifting, just absolute heroes here. Thank you for supporting the channel and getting more people in the community like that. I think this was funny. This is interesting because I had similar experiences in Avatar Frontiers of Pandora where they go for a more unique and a more immersive experience, and then they end up not letting you know where to go, and you're kind of like, am I allowed to grab that? Like, there were times in Atlas Fallen I felt that way, and there were times that I felt like that in Avatar where it's like, wait, am I allowed to be here? Did I just cheese up onto this cliff? And that's what happens when you go for a more free-form open world where you're like, I don't know if I can grab that ledge, climb that ledge, or go up there. So I think that is a risk when you don't want to have like painted cliffside ledges or handles. And right here we can see an instance of, and this happened in Jedi Fallen Order sometimes as well. Like over here she's running, jumping, and grabbing. Over here she's running, jumping, and for some reason not grabbing. One of the selling ideas of Star Wars Outlaws is its parkour-style mechanics, where Kay climbs metal grids, slides along shallow ledges by her fingertips, and uses a grappling hook to swing. However, these mechanics are hit or miss, draining the flow of any attempted parkour action. The climbable grids are highlighted in a dull yellow that doesn't exactly stand out against the rusted metal walls, and even when Kay jumps directly to them, she sometimes fails to connect. This happened to me during both previews. in different sections of the game, and the second instance led me to think that the grid wasn't actually climbable at all. I wasted a good chunk of time farting around the affected area before considering another jump to the grid. It worked, but the loop left me frustrated. I had this exact same experience in Avatar Frontiers of Pandora. I would be like, I don't think I can get up there. I don't think I can reach. I have failed to mantle. There were numerous times in Avatar Frontiers of Pandora where I would fail to mantle a ledge. And when I failed to mantle a ledge, I just concluded, oh, I can't go up there. And then you loop around, walk around, explore around, and you're like, okay, maybe I should go and try and grab that ledge again. Because a lot of the times when you would miss the parkour grabs in Avatar, similarly, you would fall like a really far away, and you're like, well, I'm a doofus, I guess I can't grab that. So I do think that is a risk whenever you make sort of a more free-form parkour, more of a free-form, open world exploration feel. You have to be very generous to player parkour grabs and edge grabs and climbable grabs. It has to be extremely magnetic, because if not, you'll end up with a situation like this where she thought, oh, I can't go there, so I guess I won't, and then, wasted a bunch of time. So I'm not saying put yellow paint everywhere. I'm saying you got to be more generous with the grabs. I don't mind some enmeshed, not obvious traversal points in my games, but Star Wars Outlaws seems to take the idea too far. Navigating the environments was so weirdly challenging. I got lost in multiple areas in my previews, even with a responsive HUD and highlighting objective markers on the screen the whole time. The little yellow indicator was difficult to follow through maze-like settlements filled with similar-looking stalls, stairwells, and hallways. And tracking objectives only got harder once blaster fights broke out. I never want to wonder where I'm supposed to be going in the middle of intense combat, but Star Wars Outlaws served up this situation multiple times. I enjoyed some sections of the game just fine, particularly the final mission that I played on the icy planet of Kijimi. I snuck into a protected two-story ballroom on a mission to steal an object in the center of the space. Nix is always by Kay's side, and he can be instructed to collect shinies, flip switches, and distract or attack enemies. And I made him do all these things during this mission. The stealth mechanics in Star Wars Outlaws are straightforward. Crouch to be sneaky. Enemies are generally oblivious unless you're directly in their line of sight. In rooms with two enemies, it's best to send Nix after one guard while silently taking down the other, and then finish off the attacked, disoriented foe as Nix scurries away. I employed this tactic to great success, and even once a blaster battle broke out anyway, I had a good time lobbing grenades and landing headshots in this level. My time on Kijimi gives me hope that maybe I just need a few uninterrupted hours of Star Wars Outlaws for the game to really click. I'm intrigued by its reputation system, where players can track their standing with various interstellar criminal networks, altering the levels of access K will have with the associated areas and characters. Hacking doors and safes involves a screwdriver and a little rhythm game, and the process is satisfying every time. The speeder controls, well, I'm stoked to try out some actual races once I practice a little more. Space battles are dizzying and perfectly serviceable. Nix is adorable in every situation. There's plenty to look forward here, but I can't forget the frustration that's seemingly built into the climbing mechanics, grappling hook, and nav system. I'm concerned it's fallen into the victim of the classic AAA bloat, offering a big universe of mediocre experiences, some of them half functional and the rest lacking depth or innovation. In the game's previews, there are hints that this is the case. As always, though, I'm prepared to be surprised. So, she's really hitting on a note that I was concerned about with this game, that they just went too broad with it. It's like, well, we've got flying, we have combat in space, we have speeders, and we have speeder combat. Oh, and we have melee. Oh, and we have stealth. Oh, and we have parkour. Oh, and we have blasters. And it's like, I think when you approach a game like Uncharted, you sort of expect all of those elements to be very basic, because it's more of a narrative-driven game. And the impression that I got from Star Wars Outlaws is that there would be narrative and there would be choices that mattered, but it didn't quite feel like a strictly narrative-focused game where those elements would be dumbed down. Like, that to me is a concern. It's like, well, if the combat feels very basic and boring, and space combat feels the same, and speeder movement and speeder combat feels that way, and if their choice to do this sort of more open world, more broad spectrum, it's like, well, sometimes the climbing doesn't work, sometimes you don't grab ledges, it's like, that'll get old really, really quickly. There were a handful of times exploring the open world in Avatar where I said, you're really encouraging me to not explore because it just doesn't feel rewarding. It doesn't feel seamless. You know? I watched all the Kind of Funnies all the funnies preview, and Tim said he had to hit 3 buttons to toss one. Hearing that tossing a nade is overly complicated. Oh, so he's saying he had to like hit multiple inputs to toss one grenade. That's interesting. Shadows of the Empire will remain undefeated, says Hadigan. I mean, it's entirely plausible that we're not going to walk away and say this was the greatest new Star Wars game, which is disappointing because when I remember when it first came out, I said that I felt like it stole the show in the summer of 2022. I thought that it stole the show. I thought for that week of Summer Game Fest, it was the strongest game that showed up. And now it's just continuing to look, downgraded, and the previews are discouraging. And, it does not sound like it's going to absolutely nail it. But let's look at a more positive one here. GamesRadar saying, I spent 4 hours in Star Wars Outlaws open world, and it feels like Red Dead Redemption in a galaxy far, far away. I mean, that's obviously high praise. It's the least Ubisoft feeling Ubisoft game I've played in ages. Like, this may be a selling point to people that they're not going to go in and have this traditional Ubisoft experience. Its open world feels less like the collectathon checklist that you may expect from Ubisoft, and instead like an open-ended canvas for more interesting stories and missions to take place on. Like in Rockstar's Old West, there are things to discover out in distant expanses, but you won't be climbing towers to uncover map markers with all sorts of boilerplate activities to complete. The team at Ubisoft Massive has repeatedly emphasized that Star Wars Outlaws is all but fulfilling the scoundrel fantasy, and that means everything including the open world. It's built to fulfill that dream. You might overhear a whisper in a cantina that points you towards some lucrative score at a hidden base out in the wilds, giving you an actionable story-driven purpose for your exploration. My hands-on time had me stunned by just how organic the devs have managed to make this all feel. Okay, so Syndicate Wars, they're going to talk a little bit about this. I'm kind of interested in how this works, because it did sound like it's a bit of a tug of war internally. Let's see. The chase led me here. Multiple things could happen. All right. Here we go. This sort of double dealing, exactly the sort of stuff in a good story about a lovable outlaw is built around, and Star Wars Outlaws is filled with it. Eventually, the intel at this base confirms that one of his lieutenants is plotting a betrayal. You can either go along with their scheme or report the info back to Gorak himself. I chose the latter, which gave me enough influence with the Pikes in the game's faction system to get free reign of the base. Suede, on the subject of yellow paint, says, I don't hate yellow paint, but I do appreciate it when a game gives clues with the character animations, little things like reaching a handout instead of just blindly trying to jump. Right. It's almost like the character... Excuse me. The character will give you clues that you can do something, for sure. People complain about those yellow markers making it obvious, so don't make it obvious, and they still complain. Well, I don't necessarily think it's that dichotomous, Dave. I think there are people who say, hey, don't make it so painfully obvious, but you could also help. I think there's a good middle ground, right? I do. I think some games do a really good job with the middle ground. Like, as I've been exploring The Last of Us Part 2, I think there's a great middle ground there. Like, it's obvious when you can't climb something if it's overgrown with vines, but then there's a section of the roof that isn't. Well, then I know, I can probably grab that ledge, right? Or if there's barbed wire, or if there's, boxes and chairs in the way that can't be moved, I just know, I can't go there. I think you can do things with the environment to clue in the player, hey, you can't go here, you can't do this, you can't climb that. I think there are plenty of opportunities to do that, so... The one thing that Lono in the channel taught me how to do is to look and see more biased reviewers. I feel like I can see those who butter up the review versus those who like to be more honest. I don't want to accuse intent. I just think there are people with different outlooks and different perspectives, so they might be more positive or more gentle than somebody else. Darth Nihilus bumps the member line to 109. That is the goal for the week there. We have changed it so that it's not an ever-rolling forward goal. Every 25, I still give 5, and VIP and Member Plus renewals help. The mixed previews for Star Wars Outlaws are likely due to the fact that it is an ambitious game that tries to do a lot, but it doesn't always succeed. While it has its flaws, it also has a lot to offer. There's no perfect answer to too many player types to serve everyone perfectly. You cannot effectively signpost without yellow paint. Oh, I'm sorry, you can. Right, I agree with you, Patrick. You can effectively signpost and let people know climbable, not climbable, interactable, not interactable. You can do that without just slapping yellow paint on everything. And the criticism that we read from Engadget wasn't that she wanted yellow paint. It was that, oh, it looks like I can climb that. And then she doesn't grab on. So she concludes, oh, I can't grab that, when she can. It's that the mechanic didn't work right. Like, don't misinterpret the feedback. I don't think that author was saying, hey, slap red paint on everything. She's like, if you're going to go with a more emergent discovery system of like, hey, maybe I can grab that graded wall, then you better grab the graded wall the first time. Single gifted from Patrick Q takes us to 110. Every Friday night, my wife and I stream with members, but if you hit the weekly goal, we'll turn it into a community game night. Thank you so much, Patrick. I want the combat to obviously be amazing, but I'm still excited for the world building and the exploration part of the game, says Ghost14. Dave says the best way to do it is to have the character have an animation where when you get near one, they look toward it. Yeah, they look toward it, or maybe they kind of reach, or maybe they stand a little bit different. Yeah. I still take yellow paint over something like Navi going, hey, listen, every time I look somewhere. Oh, for sure. I would much rather have visual clues than audio cues. I couldn't stand that in God of War Ragnarok. It was like I walked into a room and literally 5 seconds later, Atreus is like, I think we need to put that thing over there. And I'm like, can you let me just get immersed into the scene, bud? Like, can you let me kind of walk around first? It's like the white paint in Horizon and Uncharted or the orange-yellow in the Half-Life series. And another single member comes in from Zinthos. A little bit of a member train starting. Guys, thanks so much. You got a long way to go if you want this week to be community game night. There's new modes and games in Fall Guys, and you can play with myself and my wife on Friday night in Fall Guys if you guys hit the goal. If not, we'll just hang out and stream anyway. We'll just talk to you guys. But you can turn it into a fun community game night. And this week's game is Fall Guys because it's free and it's on every platform. Yellow paint started with Naughty Dog. All the other developers started copying them. I don't know if that's true. I'd have to research that. Like, Devin Prosy says, I've never had a problem with yellow paint. I think the issue with yellow paint is it started to get to the point where it was like, okay, you walk into a room and it's like, oh, you want me to grab that, grab that, grab that, grab that. Instead of like looking at the room and thinking like, where could I go? I think The Last of Us 2 does it perfectly. I think the way that they do exploration discovery in that game, I think it's the best I've played. I really do. I think the combat, the emergent and the dynamic combat is some of the best I've played. Now, I was critical of a section yesterday with Abby because I feel like it leans too heavily on the soldier aspect, and I would prefer it to feel a little bit more scrappy survival and not like a shooter, like a stealth shooter, because it still feels like stealthy, but like heavily shooty. But I still think, largely speaking, their emergent combat and their emergent discovery of like, hey, I wonder if I could climb in that window. Oh, I can. Oh, hidden room. I wonder if I should double back and scoot past this ledge, right? Oh, I can do that. Like, I think there are ways to do it where, like I said, like vine overgrowth, I know, oh, I can't climb up there. There's not yellow paint, there's not like a glowing ledge. It's just, oh, that's overgrown with vines and that ledge isn't. I can climb that ledge. So I think doing more environmental clues is better than slapping paint on everything. That is, level design is really difficult and expensive. Oh, I'm sure it is. Let's see what else they say in this game's radar. Let's see. I'm trying to find stuff about here's more stuff about the checklist aspect of the game where they say Outlaws does a magnificent job of making sure the activities don't feel like a checklist. Maybe that'll change deep into the game once you found a ton of intel and have all kinds of potential missions dotted on your map, but the objectives I found were varied and rewarding enough that I kept wanting more. Now, a lot of people have talked about, like with the expert missions, they like that aspect of the game, that when you do an expert mission, there's intention behind it. You gain a new ability. You don't just like do it for XP, right? It's not like, well, I'm trying to level up, I'm trying to fill out my skill tree. You know, I'm going to make sure and do this and get, you know, and get my skill tree filled. So we have yellow paint everywhere. You're supposed to step on your work vehicles because stupid people exist and they try to climb where they shouldn't be. I mean, this is true, Kingslayer. This is true. There was a boat section that I played, and I was like, oh, I can climb that ladder. And it literally had like paint on the ground for like where if someone's coming, like which side is the right side to go to. Because that's what you would do on a boat. You're like, don't stand beneath that. You know, something might fall through the hole above, or a person might be coming down. There's always the God of War method where the character shouts out answers to the environmental puzzles before you have begun to look for the answer. Yeah, Ragnarok was probably the worst offender. Like, there were times in the first game where that would happen, but it was usually after I had kind of stalled out and gotten stuck and couldn't figure out what you wanted me to do. You know, Ragnarok was egregious about it. Like, it was bad. There were times where I was in a room for less than 10 seconds and Atreus is saying something. I'm like, what are you doing? Let me figure it out. They have some comments here about the open world. While Tashara fits the mold of a traditional open world with big open fields dotted by points of interest, the locations in Outlaws also offer quite a bit of variety in structure and scale. I spent some time on the planet of Kijimi, the icy planet introduced in Rise of Skywalker, and this map is predominantly set on one large town. It's still open-ended, and there are still side quests to undertake and optional areas to explore, but it's much more constrained compared to the big desert you ride around in on Tashara. Opportunities for exploration also extend to space above each planet, which have their own optional objectives to complete. The space above Kijimi, for example, takes you through tunnels of stellar storm cloud with winding paths and roving bandits to deal with as you search for valuables among derelict ships and space stations. Yeah, Skill Up did not like this. He didn't think it was very enjoyable. The story has you visiting each of these planets in order to recruit various specialists to help you pull off big heists at the end of the game. And past a certain point in the story, you're free to complete these planets in any order you want. Each planet has a self-contained story, Garrity says, but you can choose to press pause on that plotline and go pursue other planets' stories whenever you want. The story will track that and will still have your own story with the different syndicates running in the background as well. Yo, Chris Haddon becomes a 21-month member. That's unbelievable. That's a lot of months. Thank you so much for being a Member Plus. That takes the member count to 112. I appreciate it. And 5 members come in from Sheriff Bruce Lee and takes us to 117. Thank you very much, Sheriff Bruce Lee. Inching us a little bit closer to the goal for the week. And every 25, I get 5, guys. We almost have our first 25 of the day. Thank you so much. We started the day with 105, and we can easily get there. Let's see what they end with. Here's why they talk about Red Dead Redemption. When I brought up how much my hands-on time with Outlaws open world reminded me of Red Dead Redemption, appropriate given how much Westerns inspired Star Wars in the first place, Garrity surprised me by referencing another beloved open world game. Quote, it's super interesting because my biggest reference was Ghost of Tsushima, which is more of the Kurosawa side of inspiration than the Western, the John Ford side of the inspiration for George Lucas. Red Dead Redemption is phenomenal because it treats the world as a world, not as a checklist of activities that are repeated often. But I think that Ghost of Tsushima, what I loved about it was the purity of having a player fantasy and really leaning into that. This is the story, the world, the character, everything fits together with the gameplay guiding everything. That's the fantasy of you're a samurai ninja in Japan. That's one of the guiding lights for this. Of course, the fantasy in this case is that you're a galactic outlaw, and that's how the open world design works here. You're learning about opportunities for scores, both big and small, and taking advantage of them when your moment comes along. It filters down into the moment-to-moment action too, when your attempts at stealth might suddenly break into open combat, and you can make improvisational use of enemy weapons and your buddy Nyx. By the end of my 4 hours with Star Wars Outlaws, all I wanted to do was play more. I found myself growing increasingly burnt out on open world games over the years, but this open world feels like one of the most complete and coherent I've seen in ages. I'll need a lot more time with Outlaws to know how it measures up against incredible games like Red Dead and Ghosts of Tsushima, but the fact that it's reminding me so strongly of them is a good thing indeed. And Joker Quinn renews a member and takes us to 118. Thank you so much for doing a VIP. And Joker Quinn says, decided not to downgrade to Member Plus. I love supporting loan of the community and the channel. I appreciate that very much. Anytime you guys renew a Member Plus or VIP, it supports us directly. That is how we're able to do this full time, especially when you guys gift members. That's the big push every day and week to keep this engine going. And you guys always answer the call, so thank you for that. We are also we have an incentive for weekend IRL streams, and if you guys think that would be fun, consider upgrading from a free membership that somebody's gifting to you, or if you're at the $5 membership, you can bump up to Member Plus for $1. It's $6 a month, and it gets you into more content. And if we hit enough of those, currently we're at like 450. If we get enough Member Plus and above, we'll start doing weekend streams with you guys. What are you guys saying? That is sarcasm, right? Yep. Skillup bought and paid for. I do not trust Skillup at all on any review. He says, are you serious? He says, no, it's 100% how I feel about him. I mean, feelings should be informed by facts, and your feelings are informed by nothing. Like, Skillup has quite literally had companies not work with him because of how critical he can get. So I think your opinion, I think it's stupid, honestly. I think it's uninformed and stupid. I don't respect it. To accuse somebody of being bought and paid for when they've quite literally gotten blacklisted by companies because they're honest in their reviews, I think your opinion's stupid. Silver Subaru with the 42-month VIP. Thank you so much. And that bumps the line again. I have no problem with somebody saying I don't like that person's content or I don't consume it. But to insinuate that they're bought and paid for, I genuinely want you to hear me saying that I think that your opinion is stupid. You don't have to like a person's content. You don't have to agree with their opinions. Trying to insinuate that somebody's bought and paid for is, there's no reason to even talk like that about somebody unless you have concrete evidence. We have evidence to the contrary. I think you're stupid. As you make a typo, brilliant display of why you shouldn't be able to hang out here. Like, there's no reason to insult or insinuate another content creator as if they're bought and paid for. So, you know what I'm saying? Somebody asked me yesterday about ACG, and I was very respectful. I was like, I respect him. I think he's a good content creator. I like what he does. I think he's a little bit more positive, right? And I still listened to his ACG's review. I'm sorry, ACG Star Wars Outlaws preview, right? Like, just because I think he leans a little bit more positive and he's a little bit more gentle in his videos doesn't mean that I think he's like untrustworthy or something. Now, obviously, anytime I say something like that, it gets spun and misrepresented. I had somebody DM me and say, they're out here trying to say that you were throwing shade at ACG, and it's like, no, I didn't. I quite literally said, no shade, I just think he's more positive than I typically like in my content, but I still consume his content, and I respect and admire how he makes his content. Like, to insinuate that somebody's like bought and paid for because you don't agree with their content, when we know for a fact that Skillup has been blacklisted by companies because he's honest. Like, I just don't stand for that kind of nonsense. There's just no reason for it. Jack Frags and Shroud didn't say anything negative about Outlaws. It's sus. I don't actually think that I would say it's sus when somebody is positive in their preview. Like, I think a preview is different than a review, right? If somebody does a review of a game and it's getting mid to mediocre scores and somebody has zero negatives to say, right? I would actually lean and say, look, that seems a little suspicious that you literally had nothing negative to say about a game. But in a preview, like, I'm not going to hold anybody's feet to the fire on a preview. They only played the game for 4 or 5 hours. They're not going to want to get overly critical, right? Maybe there's day one patches for, performance issues. Maybe there's things that are going to get fixed, or maybe there's things they don't know yet or haven't experienced yet. Like, you got to be really careful with a preview. I probably expect more content creators and more outlets to be a little bit gentle and to kind of pull their punches a little bit in a preview. In a review, okay, sure. Like, if somebody does a review and they give it like a perfect score and they act like there's nothing wrong with the game and everybody else is giving the game 6s and 7s, you could be like, well, that's a little suspicious. That seems like there's some bias there. I've even said before that I think reviews that have a clear bias are helpful. I still think they're helpful if you read them acknowledging the bias, right? Like, if I acknowledge, hey, man, I'm really biased, I love Star Wars, and boom, and I go into my review of like a game like Star Wars Outlaws, I still think that review is helpful to you, because if you have a heavy bias for Star Wars, that might make you say, hey, I could probably enjoy the game. That was something SkillUp owned in his video. He's like, as a big Star Wars fan, I just loved kind of being in the Star Wars universe. And he was like, if you're not a big Star Wars fan, this stuff might not land on you. You might be like, this is a pretty basic game. This is pretty pedestrian. This is pretty non-thoughtful. This is pretty non-deep. So I do think even when a review has a clear bias, I think it's valuable. I don't think there's a reason to be like, yep, bought and paid for. That guy's bought and paid for. It's like, no, he might just have a heavy bias. And as long as you acknowledge that when you watch it, I still think you can glean something from it. Like what I said about ACG, my general read of his content is that he leans more positive. His criticisms tend to be less harsh. Okay, now that I know that watching his content, I know that if he starts to be critical about something, I'm like, oh, this might be really bad if he's actually being critical about it, right? I feel like he's a little bit more gentle. SkillUp is a little bit more on the critical side. He'll give all the praise, but then he'll be like, this was annoying, this was bad, I really didn't like how this played out. So it's like, once you sort of learn the vibe of a content creator, I think then you can sort of adjust how you consume the content and know what to expect when you consume it. I do. I think that's an acceptable way to engage with reviews and previews, is like acknowledging the bias of the person or their propensity. There are people that I won't consume their content because they're overly negative, and I don't feel like I'm going to get anything of value out of it, right? I like Critical Drinker. I think when he talks about video games, it's really hit or miss. It's extremely hit or miss. Like, I wouldn't go to Drinker for like a review of a video game. I just wouldn't. Like, I don't feel like it's as consistent as like when he breaks down like a Star Wars piece of content or a story or something in the Star Wars universe. I'm not talking negative about anyone. Those two, I've been following them for a long time, and I know Jack used to ruin relationship. He doesn't do that. I'm seeing that. Yeah, I don't consume Jack Fragg's content, so I couldn't tell you what the trend has been with his content. But again, I would expect previews to be more positive because they don't want to, lambaste a game before it's even out. It's like, well, it's just a preview. It's just a vertical slice. Matt Piscatella says, for those interested, the Concord beta ranked among the top 30 titles on PS5 and top 75 on Steam. I don't think that's promising for a pay-to-play PvP game when they made the beta free, but hey. In order for a game like that to succeed, I think you need a very, very full funnel at the beginning, and you didn't even get that many people to play when they didn't have to pay money, which means you're not going to get enough. I don't think they're going to get enough sales. If you did your open beta and you landed in the top 10 on PS5 and maybe top 20 on Steam, then you got enough people to sample it to likely funnel enough people to buy the game. That's not enough of a sample for people to pay for that to be a good start. I think that's a worrisome. That's not a good stat. Not a good stat for a pay-to-play PvP game. People are interested in Concord. I mean, around here, people are a little bit split. I think every time we talk about Concord, what gets lost in the shuffle is me saying that it doesn't look like it has longevity, or me saying it looks sort of like just another hero shooter. Commonly, the pushback is, well, I had fun. So did I, so did my nephews, and so did my son. That doesn't change my opinion. I think similar things about Splitgate 2. I bet you it's going to be fun for a week. That's not pessimism, skepticism, cynicism. That's just honesty. It's like, yeah, it is fun. It'll probably be fun for about a week. And that's what I think is going to generally happen with titles that keep falling into such a narrow scope of, we're an arena shooter with a little bit of a twist. It's like, okay. You know, I don't think so. Pre-order Concord, do you think it'll be a healthy community on PS5 at least? I don't think so at all. No. I think 2 months in, you'll be dying for matchmaking to work properly or get a good connection in a game. I don't think that game goes healthy community numbers beyond a month. I just don't see it. I don't see it. Scope's too small, gameplay's too repetitious, and too familiar to have longevity. So, I'll tell you what we're gonna do. Let's just switch to Q&A. I feel like we've looked at enough previews. I don't want to belabor the point. We've been doing this for about an hour. Preview and review roundups start to get a little repetitious because everybody's kind of saying the same things. Overall, it seems like the previews are a bit mixed. Some people are saying it's kind of a bland game. There's not a lot of innovation. Others are saying, hey, I had a fun time. It's just good Star Wars. And then there's everything in between. So we'll obviously be checking out Star Wars Outlaws when it releases. And we will obviously, try to do our own sort of review when it starts. So if you guys want to do a gaming Q&A, go ahead and use the question command right now to submit questions. It is a members only feature. So you type !question, then put a space, and then type your question. If you want to become a member, hit the join button or the $ button at the bottom of the chat. Be sure to pick Member Plus and above. The $5 member tier is basically reserved for gifteds. Now's a great time to gift members because it'll pull people in to the members only Q&A, and then they can participate. And we will do this. We've been doing this for about an hour, and you guys seem to be enjoying it. The question pops up on the screen, so you can use that command now. I've got the Q&A. I've got the queue cleared, so you can start submitting those questions. You can obviously ask questions about Star Wars Outlaws. That is the main subject, obviously. That's the main topic. But right now we're going to shift to a more open Q&A where you can ask about anything going on in gaming. And we already have a question from Dave Langer. Reforge, are you going to check out the No Man's Sky Expedition? Man, I would love to. I really, really would love to. Right now I'm trying to finish The Last of Us Part 2, the remake. I'm trying to finish that. That was on the backlog. Remnant 2 is kind of sneaking into my backlog, and then in about 2 weeks, I know my evenings are going to be probably game sessions of Cult of the Lamb with my wife. I really liked Cult of the Lamb when I played it, and I think her and I would have a blast with it. So I don't know where No Man's Sky as an expedition fits for me. So I love No Man's Sky, but it's always a game where I play it, and I'm like, yeah, I wish that I could live in this game, and I can't. My game time is just very, very limited right now. It's extremely limited. And so No Man's Sky is one of those games where I sort of envy the people who know life the game. I sort of envy them. It's like, man, that's just such a world to live in, so many great things. And I think there's obvious signs that they're taking things from Light No Fire and putting them into No Man's Sky as well. The water effects, world detail, like the mountains and stuff like that. So If you guys don't get a response from Nightbot, your question may have been submitted too close to another person's. Delta Boss 429, you are going to want to resubmit your question. You did not get into the queue because you did it right after Elemental Hero. So a quick little copy paste, and then you can submit that. So another question here from Patrick Q says, is there an underplayed game that you think everyone should play? I've always advocated for Hellblade 1, I believe is a must play. Ori and the Blind Forest, Ori and the Will of the Wisps, I think are a must play. I actually think that you should play Ori and the Blind Forest and then Hollow Knight and then Ori and the Will of the Wisps. Like, I think you should play them in that order. So the first Ori, then Hollow Knight, then the second Ori. I think that's almost like a unique little trilogy. Yeah, and then Returnal. I agree with what Release of Kraken saying. I think Returnal is phenomenal. If you can get a full run-through of Returnal, you will be absolutely glad that you did. It really is a unique game, unique experience, and I think that's probably the best answer as far as underplayed. A lot of the games I listed are fairly popular. So yeah, Returnal. I think Returnal is sadly one of the more overlooked PlayStation, first-party exclusives because it was a rogue, and I think people died and went back to the beginning, and they were like, what the frick is this? So they did add a checkpoint system, or not a checkpoint, I'm sorry, a save point system, which means if you get to Biome 3 and you're like, oh, I got to go to bed, I got to work in the morning, you can suspend the run and pick it up the next day. I thoroughly enjoyed doing that recently. I would just sit down in the evening, try to have a really good run, get to a biome, and then suspend the run and come back the next day. So I'm going to go ahead and just answer his question. I don't know if he realized what happened. Delta Boss said, do you think Jedi Survivor does the yellow paint approach correct by not making it obvious but making it clear what's interactable? Oh, there it is. Here, I'm gonna put your question on screen. I'm gonna scroll all the way down and put your question on screen. Let's see. It's gonna hit the form in a couple of seconds here. Oh, nope, you put a period at the end of the question. You're just having a really hard time today, Delta Boss. Don't put a period at the end of your question. Anyways, I'll answer your question. That was really what I was advocating for with Star Wars Outlaws. I really, really felt that, like, just the one clip that I watched, it's like, if you jump and there's like a grate that you can grab, it should be pretty magnetic. It shouldn't be like, well, you hit it kind of a funny angle, so you fall. That happened to me in Avatar Frontiers of Pandora, and it was like, I don't understand. Like, I thought I couldn't go up there because I tried to mantle a couple of times and I didn't mantle, and there were a couple of times in Jedi Survivor where, Cal wouldn't grab a pole that he was supposed to grab. I think in general, sometimes these engines struggle with that kind of thing. So, guys, if you enjoy Q&A and you enjoy these daily streams, man, take a quick second and smash that like button. And if you can do a membership or gift a membership, consider doing that as well. And then if you are a member, you can submit a question. And we got a big, long name here for you. The Elemental. I'm not reading the rest of it. Do you think Star Wars Outlaws will be Disney Star Wars? Based on what people are saying, no. It does not sound like it's going to fall into the trope of, Disney Star Wars. Well, and here's what I will say. Disney Star Wars is really all over the place. Mandalorian and Andor are fantastic. And then, everything else is on a spectrum of, is it absolute garbage or is it tolerable? So I do feel like we are dealing with, in this scenario, I feel like Star Wars Outlaws is going to be tolerable. It's going to be like, okay, this is pretty good Star Wars, pretty good characters, pretty good universe. So, yeah, I think that'll likely be the case. Noob Tech Guy says, do you think we will get a shader patch with the day one patch Outlaws needs it? I honestly can't speculate on this. I don't have a reason to say yes or no. The developers haven't said anything. After what happened with Star Wars Jedi Survivor, I'm always super concerned about performance being overlooked, right? Thankfully, nobody from the preview said anything about performance, right? At least with Jedi Survivor, we had some indication that there were performance issues, right? We had some indication that there were performance issues. So we kind of knew going into Star Wars Jedi Survivor that there might be some issues. With this, I've not heard anything. So I really, really hope that's not the case, because Jedi Survivor was unplayable for like 4 or 5 months if you wanted to play performance mode on your console. It's still in a terrible state on PC. It has like a 66% on Steam. Just an embarrassing, absolutely embarrassing score. You should be able to get a refund on a game if its score is low enough, regardless of playtime. Like, I think if a game is below like 65% or something overall, I think once you drop into this below 60% or something, you should just be able to always get a refund. Be like, yeah, you played for 4 hours, but this game's crap, you know, according to enough of the reviews and enough of the returns, you know? Because it's like, if it's not playable, I feel bad for anybody who suffered through and tried to play Jedi Survivor on PC. Kingslayer says, thoughts on No Rest for the Wicked being a roguelite? Well, it's not a roguelite. They just added that as a mode. Yeah, it's a little confusing. It's called the Crucible, and it's basically just like a separate mode that you can play. You could review bomb to get refunds, though. Did you type that sentence and realize that it's utter nonsense, or do you mean that, Paul? Do you understand what you're saying? That's utter nonsense. So, what are you going to do? You're going to get enough people to review bomb a game on Steam to drop its score to then get a refund? Do you know how difficult that would be to do? There'd be plenty of people that would be like, I'm having a perfectly fine time. I'm not going to do that. I think that's nonsense, bro. I don't think there'd be a danger of, you know, especially if the reviews were clearly about performance issues. If there were measurable performance issues, if there were reports of performance issues, if the developer acknowledged performance issues, people would do it. Okay, maybe what I'm saying needs to be more thought out, but I definitely think when a game goes that long without any significant update, and there are recordable, measurable performance issues, and the score is that low, I don't know. I think they should do the community or the public a solid. The 2-hour refund window is fine. On one hand, I agree with you, because, like, sure, if the game's running like crap, you know, why wouldn't you just immediately refund it? But also, when they respond and say they're committed to patching and committed to fixing it, I honestly think there should be a window of time where it's like, no, you guys haven't really fixed this game. We're going to let people refund. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you keep playing the game and you don't refund the game because they are committed to fixing it, and then they don't fix it, you should be able to get your money back even if you played for 6 or 7 hours or something like that. The reason is justified. You'd be like, I didn't refund it because they said they were going to fix the game, and they haven't. I think that that's legitimate. I think it's case by case. It's like, if a game launches with known issues, bad score, people are refunding, the devs acknowledge the issues and are committed to patching, and then they don't patch, guess what? Then you for sure get people to refund after the date. And if somebody's going to push back and be like, well, then devs aren't going to commit to fixing their games. You want to know what'll happen? They'll get way more refunds the first week, because if they don't say anything, if they don't acknowledge that there are problems, then they'll get more refunds. A lot of the times people do this. The developers immediately respond and they make a post and say, hey, we're aware, we're working on it. They do that to stop the bleeding. They don't want people to refund. They want people to keep the game. I love the idea, but we need a new federal agency to administrate that. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to navigate it. It's just how I feel about it. I don't have the logistical answer. I just feel like if a game comes out, clear issues, doesn't run well, people are refunding and it has a bad score and the developer commits to fixing it, that should then be like, hey, it's been 8 months and they haven't patched the game. The thing's still broken. I want my dadgum money back. I didn't refund because they committed to fixing it. Like, look at what happened to me on console as an example. I stopped playing Jedi Survivor. I had no recourse to get my money back because we are not protected on consoles, and we should be. I believe we should be able to refund as easily. Well, I actually think Steam, it should be easier to refund than it is, but at least they let you do it, and it's fairly straightforward. I think it should be a little bit easier, but I should be able to refund on console. I will stand by that. I will never budge on that, on thinking that. So when that happened, I'm stuck with Jedi Survivor. I'm stuck with it. Can't do anything about it. And I played the game 5 months later. I want you to imagine they treated the console with the same disrespect that they treated PC, and they never patched it, and they never fixed it. That's ridiculous. I should be able to get my money back. That's a joke. Are you kidding me? You can just sell a product, know that it's not ready, acknowledge that it's not ready, and then don't really do anything to rectify it. That's inexcusable. That's inexcusable. If that would have happened to me on console, I'd have been stuck, and I never would have finished the game. I literally only went back because they fixed performance mode. Somebody left me a comment just this morning and said they're playing through Survivor right now, and they're thrilled. They're like, it's such a great story. It's such a great game. This could have been a Game of the Year contender. I don't think it would have been a Game of the Year contender, but it certainly would have gotten, I think, better reception, better sales, and potentially some nominations, but, you know, for other categories maybe. Steam will tell you if you get the studio to agree, they'll refund it after 2 hours. Yeah, I don't think you're ever going to get a Star Wars game to be, oh yeah, you can refund it after 2 hours. They knowingly launched that game and it wasn't ready, and then they freaking abandoned it on PC. It's a dadgum joke. It's a joke. It's like, hey, you are Star Wars. You're a major company developer and publisher. This should not ever be happening. You shouldn't be able to launch a game and abandon it. Of all of the properties to do that with, inexcusable. So, back to this question. Just to clarify, again, one more time. The Crucible in No Rest for the Wicked is just a really fun roguelike mode that they added. The game itself is not changing into a roguelike. Silent Spartan says, what was your issue with Final Fantasy Remake? It seems like a game you'd like. I tried Final Fantasy... Wait, which one did I try? Rebirth is the one that recently came out. I tried Remake, didn't I? I loved the opener. I loved the combat. You fought that like big spider guy or whatever. And then I got back to town, and I don't care how buxom and cute Tifa is. I don't want to play a game where I go and do something, come back and talk to somebody, go and do something. It's like, go and kill 2 bugs, all right, come back to town and talk to somebody with, you know, this setup that's like, I don't get it. I get it, but I don't get it, if that makes sense. I get why people like those games and flock to them. And a 20 bomb from MASH! I made myself choke. A 20 bomb from MASH takes us all the way to 39. 139. Dadgummit. It's like I got punched in the throat. Excuse me. Anyway. Excuse me, I am sorry. Local streamer dies shouting out large gift. Yes. I was gonna say MASH needs a tag team partner. He has been absolutely carrying the members on his back. We need some people to step up and help out, because this man has been single-handedly carrying us to the goal. Well, not single-handedly. He has been single-handedly helping us get to these goals. Yeah, I'm okay. It was one of those things where, like, I took a bad, like, breath-swallow combination, and I was like, huh. Yeah, I'm totally fine. They're like, oh no, Lono's going to die on stream. There's the 5 that I owe you guys. Thank you so much, MASH. Putting us 11 members away from the next goal of 150. The next milestone of 150. You guys have got to call some of the big boys out of retirement, man. You're making MASH carry too much of the weight. Anyway. On the subject of day one patches and stuff like that, do you think we'll get a shader patch day? Oh no, I'm sorry, I already read that. That's what got us on the subject of Outlaws. I'm sorry, on the subject of Survivor. And Talica with the 5 bomb takes us to 144. There it is, and I didn't choke that time. I got through it. I did it. Don't let the big member bombs chase you off. And here comes some more. Zubair says, I'll help out. And he takes us to 149. But then we go to 154 because of none other than MASH with another 5 bomb, which means I now owe a 5 bomb. Thank you guys so much for doing that. Everybody get involved. Let's continue to grow the community. Let's continue to accelerate the growth of what we do here. Friday nights are a blast. You get to hang out with myself and my wife, and when we hit the weekly goal, it turns into a community game night. So either way, you get a stream. Silent Spartan bumps the line to 155. That's a 20 bomb away from the next milestone of 175, and I'll have to gift more members. Thank you so much, Silent Spartan, with the layup. We'll see if anybody takes it. The Gentle Killa has a question here. Is there a game or games that you consistently play that you would play if you weren't busy playing new releases? No, I typically don't do this. Like, I don't nostalgically go back and play very many games. I've done that with Hellblade 1. I've played through it 4 times. I did that with Ori and the Blind Forest. I played through that 4 times. But now I just don't do that. Now, I'll go through my backlog. I played Death's Door, and I loved it. That's one of the games I completed this year. That's not a new game, right? And a 5 bomb comes in from Darth Nihilus and takes us to 160. We've got a 5 bomb train going on right now. Thank you so much. Excuse me. So yeah, I don't do that. I just don't. I think you'd enjoy Control. I have played Control. I liked it quite a bit. Yeah, I wish I would have been able to play all the DLC. I really liked when Control and other properties showed up in the, what's it called? Alan Wake 2 DLC. I thought that was cool. Noob Tep Guy, don't put anything other than question. You put questions. Excuse me, man. I cannot get this to go away. And a 5 bomb comes in from MASH and takes us. Absolutely awful, dude. Sorry. MASH takes us to 165, putting us a 10 bomb away from 175. That's terrible when that happens. Excuse me. I am sorry. Sorry for killing the talent. Yeah, MASH is literally out here killing me every time I go to thank him for his stuff. Try taking a giant bong hit. If that coughing's out of phase, then the coughing will cancel it out. That's science. Yeah, I should just go take a big. I don't have one in the house, so I don't know how I would do that. Oh man. Yeah, that seems like villain arc is well in place there with him. Yeah, so I mean, I think in general when it comes to games that I wish I had time for, or games that I wish I could play, I think I would put more time into No Man's Sky. Wow. It looks like the Bungie DLC did not sell good enough. They're laying off 220 people. And a 5-bomb comes in from AOZ. The gifted 5-bomb continues even though I'm slowly choking and dying and coughing. Thank you so much, AOZ. Yeah, it looks like the DLC didn't sell well enough. They're laying off 220 people at Bungie. Man. If they're EOLing Destiny, the layoffs may have been expected. They said the last round of layoffs, they were internally sort of like, yeah, if the final shape doesn't sell well enough, we're going to end up doing more layoffs. That was pretty much that was the feeling in the company. The feeling in the company was, we're gonna do more layoffs if this doesn't sell well enough. I don't think the thought was, oh, we're gonna do layoffs because we're EOLing Destiny. You know? Final shape has been well received. The commercial success they needed might not have been there, Zuby. I mean, you just don't know. You have to think about something, Zubair. With how poorly previous stuff had done, they likely then needed an enormous swing back, and it might not have swung high enough. You know? Sony killed Bungie. I mean, they operate independently, so that doesn't make any sense to even say. This was clearly in relation to, just like the last time, the layoffs were clearly in relation to them not hitting sales numbers. That has virtually absolutely nothing to do with Sony. If you actually do any bit of research into this, Sony kept them from doing the layoffs the first time around, and they spent a good amount of money for talent retention that first year. They spent an awful lot of money to avoid that. And according to people at Bungie, if it wouldn't have been for Sony, then there would have been layoffs far earlier and probably far worse. They were in a really, really bad spot. So laying this at the feet of Sony is just ignorant console tribalism. That's just people trying to stoke console fires. It was very clear, according to the people at Bungie, and according to the people that spoke with multiple outlets, if it wouldn't have been for that Sony deal, they were in a really, really dangerous spot. And when they don't hit their own sales stuff, I mean, that's on them. That's their own content. What was Sony supposed to do? What percentage of the staff is this? It sounds like 17% from what somebody said. That could be wrong, but that's what somebody said. We are committing to 2 other major changes today that we believe will support our focus, leverage Sony's strengths, and create new opportunities for Bungie talent. First, we're deepening our integration with Sony Interactive Entertainment, working to integrate 155 of our roles, roughly 12%, into SIE over the few quarters. SIE has worked tirelessly with us to identify roles for as many of our people as possible, enabling us together to save a great deal of talent. So, it sounds like Sony is helping people keep their jobs. They're integrating 155 people into Sony. Second, we are working with PlayStation Studios leadership to spin out one of our incubation projects, an action game set in a brand new science fantasy universe, to form a new studio within PlayStation Studios to continue its promising development. This could be more related to the fact that they need to shuffle talent because of EOLing Destiny, right? If you're spinning up a new studio with talent, if you're integrating 155 people into SIE, they might quite literally be saying, you've got amazing talent, but your production has to go down because you're EOLing your cash cow. We've got a solution in hand. Spin up a new studio and integrate 155 people into SIE. So actually, it doesn't sound like this is related to Final Shape. This sounds like, no, you guys are getting ready to EOL Destiny 2, I should say, not Destiny as a franchise. You're getting ready to EOL Destiny 2, which means you got to put people somewhere. They had to hire for Final Shape, and this looks like they're returning to normal. Bungie will be shut down shortly, and the new studio will take over. No. even with this reduction to staff size, they're still around 1,000 employees. That doesn't make any sense at all. That doesn't make any sense at all. You wouldn't do this and then shut down a studio with like 1,000 some odd employees. That's false. It sounds to me like they're spinning up a studio to manage Marathon. You know what I mean? It sounds like they're offloading people to spin up a studio for Marathon. Additionally, in 2023, our rapid expansion ran headlong into a broad economic slowdown, a sharp downturn in the games industry, and our quality miss with Lightfall, and the need to give both the Final Shape and Marathon the time needed to ensure both projects deliver at the quality players expect and deserve. We were overly ambitious. Our financial safety margins were subsequently exceeded, and we began running into the red. After this new trajectory became clear, we knew we had to change our course and speed, and we did everything we could to avoid today's outcome. Even with exhaustive efforts undertaken across our leadership and product teams to resolve our financial challenges, these steps were simply not enough. Yeah. Haven't seen Christopher Barrett tweet in a few days. I wonder if he's impacted by the layoffs. You can't be impacted by the layoffs if you don't work for Bungie anymore. He doesn't even work there anymore. He quietly he's just not there. We don't know what happened. They did not announce him no longer being on the head of Marathon, and he no longer works for the company. And one of their former CMs replied to the situation and said that he's not a nice person. And I was kind of like, you don't say. So, I mean, you can sleuth out what's going on, but when somebody that long with the company quietly is replaced and exits, it's like, okay. Maybe I should tweet Fox Mulder now. Ghost14 with a question. The Visions of Mana game demo was great, but it saddens me a bit because I think it's coming out between two titans. It'll make it go unnoticed. Do you think the launch window was a bad decision? Ghost14, what is this launching in between? What's Visions of Mana? What are the two titans that it's launching between? I'm not actually sure. Marathon's DOA, it's not even here yet. I think Marathon has a better shot than Concord. I've continued to say that. I think bringing the hero shooter to Extraction, I think that has a greater chance of making it, because it's a unique take. It was like, okay, they brought the hero shooter to the BR. They brought the hero shooter to the tactical econ shooter with Valorant, and Apex. So it's like, I feel like you could do hero shooter and bring it to Extraction. Oh, so the Visions of Mana game is coming out between Black Myth and Outlaws. I mean, listen, the fourth quarter is dangerous because it gets really full and then people start slipping into the first quarter of the next year, and everybody wants to get their game out in the first quarter of next year because of the fiscal year. So it's like, I don't know. Sometimes you just got to launch and just trust that your game has an audience and has people that want to play it. And I don't necessarily know if a game like that's going to be, in trouble because of Black Myth, Wukong, and Star Wars Outlaws. From a marketing perspective, maybe it gets a little bit drowned out, but I think that game probably has its own, as Air is saying, as Air Drawmeyer is saying, it probably has its own audience. It probably has its own demographic, would be my guess. So, Suede says, thoughts on the PSVR 2 price drop? Probably the right time to do it. Seemingly has really helped with sales. Listen, I'm just going to continue to say it. VR has an insanely uphill battle, and they need a killer app. They've had good games, but they need a killer app. They need something that blows people away, that like, you have to get VR. And I just think that's a really hard thing to do. I don't think PlayStation churned out enough first-party games. That's my personal opinion. If they wanted the PSVR 2 to take off, I think they needed 2 big first-party VR games a year, and they did 1. So, And, you know, you can say, oh, but GT7. Okay, but where's the rest? Matt with a $10 super chat says, it's been very scary, exciting, terrifying, exhausting the last 4 years. Super proud of you, buddy. Keep up the great work. Thank you, Matt, for the $10 super chat tip. Guys, if you're enjoying Q&A, you can ask about Outlaws. It doesn't have to be any other gaming topic, but we kind of ran through the previews of Star Wars Outlaws, so take a quick second. Smash that like button. We need 60 more likes right now, and you can keep gifting members. You're 5 away from me gifting 5 more. Every 25 I still get 5, but that's the goal for the whole week, and you guys are nearing the halfway point. I would love it if they got Half-Life Alyx somehow. I don't know. You need something. You need a steady cadence of first-party games so that people know that the PSVR 2 is, you know, gonna be a thing for a while, instead of here's Call of the Mountain and here's a bunch of poorly ported slop. PlayStation's quality control for VR games coming to the VR 2 is embarrassing. I bought like 3 games in a row that were so dadgum bad, I stopped doing it. I was like, I'm not going to keep doing this. They were poorly ported. The quality control was bad. They didn't run well. Synapse was great. Gran Turismo 7 is great. No Man's Sky is great. The Star Wars game is great. And Call of the Mountain was just too much climbing. I thought the combat and the bow was the most fun part, and it was like I was just doing this the whole time. But I'm telling you, PlayStation's quality control for the PSVR 2 is embarrassing. I bought 2 or 3 games in a row that weren't ready. They weren't ready. They were poorly ported. They ran terribly. There was a game I couldn't even play. It was like it doesn't even work right. It hadn't been properly ported over. That's on them. That's on them. They should not have let all those companies do that. It's like, oh, you guys are selling VR, great. We want to make some more money with our game. And they sloppily port a game over. Get out of here with that. I spent $550 on this thing, and you're letting companies port over games poorly. No, that's not. I don't give them a pass on that at all. I bought a 3rd game that was clearly not ready, that had been ported from PC, and I was like, this is a joke. This is an absolute joke. I was literally in a helicopter shooting a minigun, and when the helicopter turned, so did I. It was like just basic things like that didn't work properly. So what ended up happening was I ended up having to completely reset my orientation because they basically didn't have my character turn with the helicopter. It was like the gun stayed, the helicopter like turned around me, so my character was like going like this. It was like, what is happening? They didn't properly code it. It didn't work properly. VR's an afterthought. I don't know what they're doing with it. I'm glad to see it get a boost in sales because of the price drop. You know, maybe that'll motivate PlayStation to you know, throw more behind it or get better games, or I don't know what the heck, but it's bad. Citizen JV says, could Assassin's Creed Shadows steal the spotlight from Star Wars Outlaws? I really think it's quite a possibility. Steal the spotlight. They're coming out, you know, relatively far apart. So, no. I don't think so. I mean, okay, so let's do the math here. Star Wars Outlaws release date is August 30th, and then AC Shadows release date is November the 15th. No, not at all. They're not even close enough for that to happen. You have more than 2 months. There's no danger at all of that. They're both going to have, I would imagine, they're both going to have huge commercial success, and then that'll kind of be the end of it. I think AC Shadows will be very commercially successful. It may go on to be more successful than Valhalla. Outlaws will be commercially successful literally just because of the name Star Wars. Like, as poorly as Jedi Survivor was reviewed by users in Steam, it didn't seem to matter because it was Star Wars. You know. So, And Captain Toasty Buns renews the member and says, big howdy. Thank you so much, Captain Toasty Buns, for doing 31 months. Remember, guys, if you're paying for your own membership, you want to be at a member plus or above if you want it to count towards the goal. I can't count standard members because gifted members can celebrate, which means they would double dip and then it would throw the whole thing off. So we're also trying to get member plus and above numbers to basically double. We have about 450 people currently at member plus and above. So consider upgrading. Very easy. The upgrade command, or go to the members perk page and just bump up. It's $1 more, and it really helps us out. It really does. We absolutely have got to rotate people out of the gifted pool. It's roughly the same people always getting a gifted membership, which is great, but it also means we're not letting new people experience what we do here. So consider trying that out for us. Dave Langer says, do you think Sony will now take control over Bungie? I mean, there was so many rumors about the possibility of that. There were rumors about there were rumors about, like, if this doesn't happen, then, you know, PlayStation's going to come in and take over. I have such a hard time not letting, like, my personal desires enter the picture here. Right? Because at a personal level, I would absolutely love for Bungie to get completely gutted with its upper management. I think the upper management and the C-suite and the leadership, I think they're terrible. I think they're toxic. I think they need to be exposed for things that they've done. I think that. Do I think it's going to happen? I have no idea. I really don't. Right? I would love for PlayStation to go in and clean house. I would love it. You know? I would just go in there and absolutely clean house. And get rid of these people. You know? It's in their statement, Sony's integrating them. That's not an accurate representation of what's going on. They want to retain talent. So 155 people are being integrated, and then a team is being spun up into a new studio to work on one of their new games. That's not accurate, Jazz. Sony is not integrating them. They're still going to roughly have 1,000 of their own employees, and as far as we know, still operate independently. Now, if that changes, or if this is the beginning stages of them being integrated, then so be it. But the announcement does not say that Sony is integrating them. They are retaining talent. So, they're still going to be a fairly large company. They're still going to be close to 1,000 employees, as far as I can tell from my own just quick estimates in here. I'm like, yeah, they're still going to be around 1,000 employee company. If you're integrating 1,000 employee company, I don't think you do 155 people and then spin up another studio. I think what they're trying to do is, this is my personal theory as to what's going on. I think they're trying to get Bungie's operating costs in line for a studio that's putting their cash cow on an EOL path, end of life path, and then they're also going to have to start building Destiny 3. Right? Well, if you're going to do that, well, then your operating costs need to go down because you're going to be generating less revenue. Therefore, you need to get into a better position. I don't think that Sony's like, yep, we're integrating you, you're done. I think they're like, okay, one of the best ways to get your operating costs more in line with an end-of-life trajectory and building another game, because you're going to generate less cash flow when you're doing that, is we're going to integrate this batch of 155 people into SIE, because Center for Live Service Excellence has got to have probably full-time staff members dedicated to it. I'm assuming that's what that's going to be. They haven't quite said, other than that they're being integrated into SIE. Also, spinning up a new studio, I think it's likely the studio and the team that's going to be in charge of Marathon. And that's going to be a separate thing, because that needs to, again, likely, for the case of measuring operation costs against revenue to establish ROI and profit margins, that's easier to do if you slice that part of the company off and say, hey, your Marathon, your XYZ studio, and then you're in charge of Marathon. Because guess what? I think that goes right in line with something I've continued to say, that I think PlayStation's live service strategy is small teams with small budgets and games that if they don't go anywhere, the loss is mitigated by the company being significantly smaller. The question is what, if any, crossover there is between the integration and spin-off studio and the people that are no longer at Bungie. It could be upwards of 500 people no longer at Bungie. I don't think it's Marathon. If it was Marathon, they would have name dropped it. They said it's a new game. Oh, really? They said it's a new game. I assumed it was Marathon. It was an incubation team that they had. Oh, so it's a completely separate game. Okay. Well, I mean, that hurts that part of my theory then a little bit, that if it's not Marathon, you know, maybe again they're looking at Marathon as like a small cost project that, again, if it fails, then, you know, so be it. The loss is mitigated by the fact that it wasn't very expensive to make. You know? Excuse me. Captain Toasty Buns. Listen, man. Every journey starts with one step. I believe that we can get 1,000 people at Member Plus and above. I believe we can do it. There are roughly anywhere from 2,000 to 3,000 members every single month. The vast majority of those are gifted. I believe we can go from 450 people at Member Plus to 1,000. I believe it. I really do. They said a brand new sci-fi fantasy game. Okay. Well, we'll see. We shall see. You know? To go back to the original question, do I think Sony will take over Bungie? I don't see any sign of that, no. I feel like a lot of those rumors were hearsay. A lot of those rumors might have just been like internal, you know, water cooler fear-mongering talk of people being like, oh, the sky is falling. So... Mash with a question says, do you think we are actually moving to a gaming industry around portable gaming as the mainstay, or is it just an opportunistic fad largely as a reaction to the success of the Switch? I believe portable gaming and gaming on the go will continue to grow, but I also believe it will have larger footprints in certain markets. I believe gaming on the go in America in particular will always be tough because our internet infrastructure sucks. Like, you can't go to a Starbucks or hop on a train or a tram or go to a cafe and get great internet that would support a lot of the games that people are that are now playing. Right? Now, for like single player experiences or non-multiplayer experiences, non-live service, non-online experiences, sure, but I still think the way that gaming on the go has been so, you know, immensely successful in Japan specifically, with the Nintendo Switch attach rate being that roughly 1 in every 4 persons in Japan has a Nintendo Switch, you know, I would say that's a cultural thing impacting that at some level. So I think there's going to be demographics and markets where gaming on the go gets an immense foothold. I think America, your biggest challenge is going to be so many people game and they're playing Warzone or Fortnite or Apex or any other live service game, whether it's a you know, an MMO or a BR or something. So I just don't know. I don't think gaming on the go gets a foothold here anytime soon. It culturally, we very much, especially sort of in the wake of 2020, we are a very individualistic society. We are very insular. We like to sort of, you know, the social aspect of our country has changed dramatically. So I think gaming on the go is, it's just going to struggle here. You know, Americans predominantly drive places. We predominantly drive to places. We don't have opportunity for gaming on the go like other cultures do. Yes, like, we urbanized really early, so our public transportation's awful. Our trains are terrible. Our buses, you know, our subway systems, they're all old and terrible, right? Cities and countries now that are urbanizing later, their technology is getting integrated into public transit. So you hop on a tram, a train, a subway, or whatever, and its infrastructure is built around the idea of like Hey man, it's the 21st century. You're going to sit on a tram and have high-speed internet. That's a massive dilemma. You can't shift that, by the way. Like, American culture and American practice isn't going to shift, even if over the next 25 years there's heavy investment into our internet infrastructure and our public transit systems. That doesn't naturally mean that people suddenly shift and change their lifestyles. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, it could, but I think that's a huge barrier for gaming on the go in America specifically. So, gaming on the go will continue to rise. It will continue to expand. You'll see more of it. Same with cloud gaming, but it'll be in specific demographics and specific markets. It won't get a foothold in America anytime soon. So, Dark Taco with a question says, how are you going to buy and play Star Wars Outlaws? Full purchase or rent it on Uplay Plus? It's a game that I likely will buy and complete because it does look like a game that I would enjoy. While I am worried about performance and depth and overall quality, I largely think it's a game that I would have a good time with. Yeah. I would imagine I would buy it. The renting on Uplay Plus, I don't like doing that. I don't like signing up for something and then having to cancel it. I would rather just buy the game, you know? And another question here from Citizen JV. Why would you play Star Wars Outlaws when Jedi Survivor exists? I mean, no disrespect. This question's kind of a weird comparison. I mean, if this is what you want to do, go for it. But they're very, very different games. Very different games. I think you could enjoy both. You could enjoy neither. You could enjoy Outlaws and not Survivor, because you're more of a Uncharted action adventure fan and you don't really like the melee style combat of Survivor. Or the inverse could be true. I don't think these games are necessarily pitted against each other. I don't. So, two different kind of games exactly. Yeah. So, guys, take a quick second. You got about 10 minutes and we're going to go to Writer's Room. You can smash that like button. Get us a 300 likes. And a bit of a different day today. No upload, right? No upload. We just hung out and we did a Star Wars Outlaws preview roundup. So thank you so much for tuning in and hanging out. And you can gift some more members to bring them to Writer's Room. If you're not a member, you can become a member right now, and you could come to the way we end our day in Writer's Room, and you got a little bit more time to submit questions as well. I hope you guys are enjoying bringing back Q&A. We're definitely down to a more core turnout on live streams lately, and I read some comments on Twitter. It seems like other people are having similar experiences on YouTube, so they may have done sort of some resets. So we're sort of in that phase where I also took a trip. So we may see new faces and returning faces over the next couple of weeks. That's happened before. People are like, oh man, I haven't been seeing your videos. That'll probably happen over the next couple of weeks. So a great way to bring those people back is to gift members, hit like, get involved, be a part of what we're doing, support Q&A, hang out in the Discord. They've been doing members-only town halls to receive feedback from people about, what are certain things we could do here with the content and with the members-only content and the like. And we are 4 members away from the next milestone. I'll gift at 175. Every 25 I gift. So thank you guys so much for everybody that did that today and for all of the new subscribers as well. Outlaws has too many red flags where it honestly makes more sense for me to rent it if I like it. Look to grab it on my next paycheck, I think you meant to say. The more sensible thing is to play my backlog of games. You have more chances to pay less taxes than see the world changing according to our vision of what the world should be as a gamer. Yeah, I guess that's true. I bought my Switch when I was in Japan because of how convenient it was. And Eugene said, outside of a few cities, our cities are built around cars. Cars came first, and then the cities exploded. Whereas other places, the cities were built around walking and public transportation. Yeah. Yeah. Maybe an unpopular opinion, but I'm not enjoying Flintlock. It's kind of repetitive. I wouldn't say that's not I wouldn't say that's unpopular. I wouldn't say that's an unpopular opinion at all. I think it didn't do very well. I think the studio is looking at layoffs. I thought I saw this morning that they're considering layoffs or shutting down or something. I don't think it did very well. Yeah, I don't think that game did well at all. You know, both commercially and critically, it just did not seem to garner a good start. Okay, so Bungie is not going to be around 1,000 employees. They're going to be around 850, according to Jason Schreier. They're shrinking from 1,300 people to 850. 220 laid off. Now, 155 are moving to Sony and 75 to a new studio. Pete Parsons, we were overly ambitious. Our financial safety margins were subsequently exceeded, and we began running into the red. There you go. Not unpopular at all. The game is bad. Well, yeah, I didn't play it. I wanted to. And it just, the reviews kept me away. Like I said, upwards of 500. Oh, right, because 220, 155, 75, right? Only 220 have actually been laid off. Yeah. Can you link the news? I mean, it's all over Twitter. I tend to not. We don't tend to put links in chat. I mean, it's, if you just go to Twitter, it's all over Twitter. There's not a particular article I can link you to right now. It's just a bunch of tweets. There was a post from Bungie, but I don't have a link to that right now. All right, guys, in about 6 minutes, we're going to shift gears. So, appreciate everybody today. How many questions was that? We had 16 questions submitted, so thank you everybody who took part in Q&A. I'll spam a link in chat in a little bit. So you guys got 5 minutes to make a mad last dash, and then we'll go ahead and head to the writer's room. $800 is still massive for a single developer. I wouldn't say that it's massive for Bungie. I would say it's precarious because, as you're saying, it's large. So they're going to have to start generating money to stay at 850. $155 roles, not people, going to SIE, but it does sound like 75 people are going to the new studio. That's not how I read it. Did I misread it, Ganks? It read the opposite, I thought. Working to integrate 155 of our roles, roughly 12% into SIE. SIE has worked tirelessly with us to identify roles for as many of our people as possible. Oh, that's yeah, no, Ganks, that's perceptive. They're working to get 155 people integrated, but that doesn't mean that that's going to happen. Right? British does a 5-bomb Agent of Chaos and takes us to 176 at the buzzer. The next milestone's 200, and I owe you guys 5. Thank you so much, Riddish. Appreciate you guys that keep the gifted members going all the way to the buzzer. There's 5 more from me. You guys could make a mad dash for 200. You're going to have a really, really steep hill to climb on Thursday and Friday. We've got the whole goal for the week posted there for you. We've made it easier to hit the goal. I can't make it any easier than I have. All VIP renewals and all Member Plus renewals count. That's like 450 people a month that get to add to the total just by renewing. So thank you so much. We've made that about as streamlined as possible, and we appreciate the people that continue to do that, man. Yeah, so it doesn't sound like all 155 people are moving. It sounds like they're going to try to. Everyone being laid off is getting a severance package and get to keep health insurance. So everyone whining on Twitter of people losing income and safety net are just drama farming. So as Eugene's saying, around 550 roles cut from the main Bungie, 220 laid off, 155 going to Sony, and 75 new studios. But again, that's not what the blog post says. They are attempting to get 155 people integrated into SIE. That doesn't mean they're going to. 100 could integrate and 55 could still get laid off. The blog post reads like they are attempting to get those 155 people integrated into SIE, but it doesn't mean that it's a for sure thing that's happening. They're trying to. You know, 100 people could get integrated and the other 55 could be like, it just isn't going to work. You guys got to go too. You think any studio working on a game as a service game should have at least 2 support studios? I mean, I don't think you can come up with some rigid rule or formula. You know what I'm saying? I think one of the best things to do with a game as a service game is to slowly hire to meet demand. Like, look at what Arrowhead did with Helldivers. They didn't scramble. They didn't panic. They didn't immediately overhire. They just kind of waited. And look, the numbers are down. Their engagement numbers are down. It's a really, really good thing they didn't overhire because guess what? They're in a far better position. They're far more profitable because of that. As final straw, says Paul. I wouldn't mind if Parsons was gone. I was told by former employees that he's a huge part of the toxicity and retaliation culture at the company. So, I wouldn't mind a C-suite restructuring over there. So, all right, let's head to members. I'm going to spam a link in chat. I'm going to redirect you guys as well. This is something that you get access to as a gifted member or as a paying member. So make sure your membership's up to date or consider clicking join so that way you can come with us. I'm just waiting for the back end to update. There it goes. Hey, thanks so much for being a member, and you may have gotten a member this week. We already are at 176 members on the week, getting close to the halfway mark of the goal. Make sure, if you're a member plus or a VIP, make sure you're renewing during those streams because that does count towards the goal. We have made that adjustment as a way to say thank you to the people who are paying for their own memberships. If you are watching this right now and you are at the $5 member tier or you're a gifted member, consider upgrading for $1. And you go to Member Plus, and what that does is it makes room for more people. We really need to make some space into that, and we will reward you guys for it. We have a really cool IRL stream thing planned. So if we go from the roughly 450 people right now at Member Plus and above up to 1,000, we will do some really fun streams for you guys. I'm going to end that previous stream and bring people over with Redirect. And Cryle just celebrated their Member Plus, and I'm going to bump the line to 177. Always make sure and do that, guys. It's a great way to